Good evening, Professor. How are you?
Hey, boss lady, how are you doing tonight?
Good. I hear we're talking about having a hard time recruiting employees.
Yes, ma'am. That's why you still got me.
Oh,
Or should we say replacing employees for this aspect? Yes, ma'am. We're talking about having a hard time recruiting employees. Almost didn't get that out. Seems to be a thing going on now in the culture.
yeah, I've heard that.
What's really happening that I see out there from the literature is that it's taking longer to recruit employees than previous in the past. Used to you just go in and sign up, so to speak, and knew who your parents were, family was, and are you right on the spot? Now it's even if that is true, they've got to go through all this paperwork, be sure you qualify of age, be sure you don't have any bad record on you, etc. Done things you shouldn't, have to go take one of them tests, urine tests to check you out totally. It takes time anymore.
Hmm.
And
Seems like everything takes time.
it does. You would think with all this technology we have, it would be less, but the problem is they keep implementing more technology for us to use.
Right.
And another thing that happens is the workforce is changing also. A lot of people will apply for your position, but bless their hearts, they don't take a peek at what you're really asking for. For example, maybe it's not telework anymore since COVID is over with, and they don't read that part. And then they find out in the interview, oh, you mean I can't work from home? No, this is a full time, at the office job. Oh my. Um, or maybe they decide, they only want to work 4 days a week and they have an interview with you, but you advertise it's a 5 day a week job, Monday through Friday. So you're like,
Yeah, are
unbelievable.
they paying attention or they're just trying to see if they can
I can't answer that. I can only tell you
see
what's
what's going
happening.
on? Yeah,
And
I wonder.
but concerning your part, are they seeing what's going on? They're having people now that'll come in and interview with you. They already have a job someplace else,
Hmm.
meaning they applied to you at other place and they want to see if you got something better for them.
True. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness. And then what you get your posting and you're interviewing, then the question comes, how long are you going to take before you decide? And that's a little bit of a process. You don't want to jump real quickly because it may not be the right employee. Used to be we would try you out. We'll try you for a week and see if it works. Well, now you really can't do that. Once you make the offer, it's in stone. So here we have to go from there.
Hmm. And then you got to go through HR, and that takes time.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight though, we're gonna follow a different perspective. It's still about recruiting people, but we're going to go back to the Bible and not only talking about recruiting people, but maybe it's a part of how our legislative system, or I should say judicial system, our judges are set up for our day and age now, something that we learned from past times. Moses, when may I jump in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. I like her hat, by the way. It's a
Thank you.
plain Southern, I'm going to go out and maybe hunt hat.
Right.
She's not riding a
Fun.
tractor yet because it doesn't say John Deere on it, but she's going hunting. You need fish in that hat, I
Still
guess.
fishing. It's more
Okay.
like fishing season.
Oh, me. So,
People are still hunting.
they're still fun.
Anyway.
Yeah. Um, Moses. Moses was leader of the children out of Israel, or from Israel, excuse me, the Israelites out of Egypt into the promised land of Canaan. And Moses, on his journey, of course, people have problems. Anytime you have a group of folks together, they don't necessarily get along all the time. And Moses, he had sent his wife and his two sons away to his father in law. And Moses stated, I'm sending them to you because I've become an alien in a foreign land. Another way he could have put that, I guess, is to say, I'm just too busy and don't have time um, for my family. And that's sad to say. But that leads into the story that we're going into at this point, and that is Jethro, his father-in-law, he was a priest. Remember, the Aaron's side of the family was also a priest as well, his brother. Uh, but irrespective, the uncle, or excuse me, the father-in-law came and brought his wife and two sons with him. They went to visit Moses. And of course, Moses told him, everything that had happened that God had blessed him with, and getting the people out of Egypt, going through the desert at this point. And, they're all excited. Jethro then, the next day, when Moses got up, he went with Moses. to see kind of what Moses did during the day. Well, Moses went, sat in front of the people, and he was judging things that people brought to him, their complaints that they had against one another. Maybe it be land, property, maybe somebody mistreated another. And his father said at the end of the day, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You're just overworking yourself and the people too. The people are just standing in line day after day, and this is all you're doing day after day." And he said, "Well, because they want to know what God's will is in deciding this particular problem that they have." And it's kind of like, "Son, let me give you a better idea what to do." And so Jethro gave him, I'm going to call it the 4 steps that Jethro put before him. And it's called select, train, appoint, trust. Well, that's something we do today in management. Not a bad idea. But what Jethro started off and said, select the right people first. Something we try to do in the hiring process and recruitment. Mm-hmm. And he said, what you want to do, you want to hire people who are God-fearing men. And you want to be sure that they have a fair measure, meaning they want to be sure that fairness is given. We always talk about the scales of justice here. And so he said, choose them that have the right heart. Then the second thing that he said, you need to teach them. You got to turn in there. You're the one, Moses, who knows God's commands, God's will. You know God's law. You need to turn around and teach them what you know. Train them. Then he said the next thing you got to do is appoint them. And I'm looking here on how he appointed the men. And he told him to break them up, so to speak, and how you appointed them. Let some be responsible for the 10. Let some be responsible for the 50, some for the 100, some for the 1,000. So if you think about it, they were not necessarily every person who was appointed just handling a few people. Some were handling more people. And it may actually dealt, and I didn't delve into the literature, what the problem was. If one entity couldn't handle it, maybe the next, or maybe they just looked at it as just a couple of people who were having a division versus a big number. And of course, his father-in-law told him, look, if it's too much, then have them bring that problem to you if it's something they can't answer. And the last thing after the appointing is to trust them. And see, a lot of us have problems with that even after we hire people. We got to trust them. They're going to make mistakes. There's no question about it. But as long as their heart is in the right place, then there's not a problem. It'll work itself out. So Moses followed along with what his father-in-law had suggested. And of course, it took a heavy burden off of him, but also the people too. There's no more of this, waiting in line all day to see Moses. But there was one that came to the point that we're like, well, what is a type of, dispute that went before Moses? And of course, that was in the first part of Exodus. And when we get into Numbers, we have what I call difficult case that showed up. And the difficult case that made it to Moses. And this was a good case for him to handle. I could see where other people would have a problem with it. You had a gentleman who was a part of the Manasseh tribe, and the gentleman had no sons, but he did have a couple of daughters. And the problem is that the man died. Big deal. The daughters would get the property then. After, mother's gone, dad's gone, the daughters would get it. Well, true, but the way God had split up the land of Canaan was for particular tribes to have so much property. So if these daughters turned around and didn't marry men from Manasseh tribe, meaning another tribe, what would happen? That property would go over to the next tribe. And so the tribal leaders for Manasseh were having grave difficulty with this. And so they wound up taking the problem all the way up to Moses. And of course, Moses thought about it, consulted God, and because God's will was that the property should stay with that particular, I'll call it clan, the Manasseh clan. So Moses told him, all right, here's the answer here. The daughters, if they marry, they can only marry men from Manasseh. Of course, the daughters said the men were ugly in Manasseh. No, they didn't. I'm just teasing.
They didn't want their own town, God. They wanted to go outside.
They wanted to go outside. They wanted the cuties. I'm teasing folks. Really, I just had to throw that in. Maybe they weren't hard working. There was nothing said about it in the Bible. I'm ad-libbing there. But irrespective, the girls did marry men in the Manasseh tribe. So therefore the property stayed there. Now there is the question, which is not addressed, what would happen if the girls didn't marry anyone? Well, I would suggest that the answer would be the property would still stay within the Manasseh tribe. And the tribal leaders could decide how they're going to divvy up that property accordingly. Because again, God's plan was that each tribe received a certain space, property lines, whatever, divided up evenly in Canaan. So I'm 11 minutes after, so I might even beat the 15 even better. And what's the story to this, folks, is the 4 steps. You know, you got to hire them. I know you don't want to, but you got to. And they're not going to be the best. They never will. But on the other hand, they may even be better than you as time goes on. And of the 4 steps, you know, hire them, train them, you know, after you appoint them, the most important step is to trust them. If they're good people. And so that's going to lead me into finally saying, when you are going through your interview process, the recruiting process, I would keep divine guidance in there. Meaning I'd be praying to the Lord. I would pray to the Lord when I'm going through the different candidates to select who I'm going to interview, that the Holy Spirit would give you some guidance on who to check. These are the ones you want to seek. Secondly, when I started my interview, I would pray also, please help me, Father, to see the right person. Or on the other hand, see the things that are bad that I don't want this candidate. And then last but not least is when the person starts, ask the, dear Father, that you give me patience for this person, to put my trust in them and let them, if they falter, that's fine, as long as their hearts are good. I'll continue to work with them and make them go. So my exit here is that you need some divine leadership here from the Lord above to help you choose the right person and make this work right for you. Horrible process anymore recruiting. I'm glad I'm out of it, but irrespective, it's something that most of you out there are going to face.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always good to have his guidance because Lord knows we need
He
it.
does.
We need it. And I like what you said, the story about the Moses. It kind of reminds me of, you know, you have maybe the group director or whatever they're called in the place, and then you have like division directors or branch
Mhm.
chiefs. So you have people, you know, that can take groups of people because it is just too much for one person. I mean, we've seen that before where the hire manager tries to manage everything, everybody, and it's impossible. You need to have those, you know, separated out, I think.
Otherwise, they are going to be working the 24/7, that hire
Mhm.
manager.
Yeah,
No rest for them.
right.
And as Moses' father once said, that's not fair to the manager. And it's not fair to the people either that have got problems because they got to be sitting at that computer 24/7 waiting for the top manager to tell them what to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're waiting to get in to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's a cool story that could
Thank
make me
you.
think of that. So,
I did my job tonight.
you stayed hired.
Oh my, you can't recruit anybody. Okay, I'm a minute early. Can we go now?
Yes. Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you for having me,
As
boss. She'll keep having problems with recruiting, I'm hoping. Thank you, Father.
Nobody can live up to you.
Oh, sure. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.